Ladies and gentlemen, it's Wednesday night here on the great big internet, September 20th, 2023. What does that mean? It's meaning time for Material Issues. It's episode number 121. I'm Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. I'm over here in South Jersey, just outside of Philly, where it's starting to get dark already, early evening. But my good friend, Mr. David Bash with the International Pop Overthrow Festival, he's all the way on the West Coast where it's still balmy and sunny in the late afternoon. David, good evening. How you doing, my friend?
Good evening, Mark. Good evening, everyone watching. Ooh, little.
Yeah. And with that, David has to clean the camera off. It's all good.
Oh, yeah, old age is doing more than creeping up on me, I'll tell you. No, it's actually cloudy here today. And not balmy either. It's about, I don't know, maybe mid-70s. So not bad, of course, but.
Well, old age might be creeping up on you, my friend, but you're looking better than ever. I mean, your smile is vibrant now. The bowler hat fits you well. And, of course, your fashion sense is always second to none.
Well, today I thought I would wear something in honor of our guest. This is sort of a jellyfish-looking shirt. I don't think it wasn't designed with him in mind. It just happened to look like this. And I thought, you know what? I have to have it.
Nice.
So,
hey, Barry, nice to see you.
Hey, Barry. Wow, I'm really squeaking. I think I bought this maybe about 15 years ago or maybe even more. But, yeah, it just spoke to me.
Oh,
but I thought I'd wear it in honor of our guest.
Well, we've had quite a run of guests the last couple of weeks. Last week, the show with Jim Stafford got a lot of positive comments, so that was a great show. Hey, and
excuse me, people.
Be another great show tonight. Obviously, we're looking forward to this, and then we've got a couple of things coming up in the near future, which are awesome. And you've got a run of IPOs in November, correct?
Man.
Rena, we need I'm like
good boy.
Oh Lord, I was just watching an old What's My Line where who was the woman? Oh my God, 1965. One of the panelists. God, I can't remember. I gotta get back to
Dorothy Kilgallen or Arlene.
Yes, yeah, and it was her show where she did the show. And then she died a couple hours later.
Well, we don't want to say she died exactly.
Well, she OD. Okay, it's not. Well, yeah.
Some people think she was murdered because she had information on the Kennedy shootings. She was a reporter. Dorothy Kilgallen was a reporter.
Dorothy Kilgallen, yeah.
And it was thought that she had some info that certain people didn't want out. Hey, Tim. Always great to see you. So. There's definitely some evidence to suggest she was murdered.
Yeah, but I love those old shows. How classy everybody even looked on a game show. They dressed up.
How classy they looked and how eloquent they were.
Eloquent, yeah.
And also not even just in what they said, but vocally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would never hear anybody with vocal fry at that time.
Yeah,
nobody was going to.
I mean, that panel had Tony
Elizabeth Taylor. How are you? Nobody spoke like that back then.
Andy, thanks for staying up late.
Midnight in the UK, and he's still with us. We love it.
Yeah, very nice.
I don't even.
But Tony Randall.
We digressed a bit here, didn't we? Oh,
we always do.
We did IPO Arlington last weekend, and it went great, but it almost didn't come off at all. 2 hours before the first show was going to start on Thursday night, I got a call from one of the people in the Alan Pecci employ, Mr. Jack Watkins, who said, our venue is shut down.
Wow.
But we found another one. I just wanted to make sure it was okay with you that we run it there. I said, hell yeah. Because the other choice was not do it at all. So it turned out that this venue a couple of streets away, called Jay Gilligan's, took us on at the last minute, and we ended up doing all 3 shows there, and it was great.
Looked like a nice
fine venue run by very good people. But that's how Arlington, Texas is. There's just everybody's friendly and very hospitable, and the music was awesome as well. So it all went fine, but it could have been a disaster.
Yeah, indeed.
But yeah, so that went great. So I don't have an IPO until November, when we do 3 on the East. We have New York, Boston, and Toronto for the first time since 2016. So that should be fun. And so when I got home from Texas, I had this waiting for me, the Who's Next Lifehouse box, which is one heavy mofo, let me tell you. I haven't had a chance to dive into it yet. I've just been busy with other stuff, but I really can't wait to hear it, with all the Lifehouse demos and other outtakes and Record Plant, Olympic Sound Studios, and a bunch of live stuff. It's quite a box set.
Very cool.
And of course, it has the parental advisory on it. Yeah, Who's Next? Your kids are going to be traumatized by listening to Who's Next. So just make sure nobody under 18 listens to this. God forbid.
Yeah. There's nothing as bad as that these days.
Yeah, and then when I, also while I was away, Jan Wenner, and this couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, made one of the biggest faux pas of any journalist ever when he basically said that women and blacks aren't articulate enough to sufficiently express what life is about in their songs. Right. Yeah. I know he didn't exactly say it that way, but that's certainly how it came off. And now he's off the Hall of Fame board, and he's persona non grata everywhere. And yeah, Jan Wenner, this one's for you, motherfucker.
Well, it's all good. I'm glad you had a great time in Arlington. No, I'm glad it all worked out.
But then I get to the airport for my flight, and I'm saying to myself, don't have a Mont Blanc store in this airport. Please don't have. And of course there was one. So I couldn't resist, and I got myself a new Mont Blanc. This one is a little thicker than my usual one. That's what she said. And it's got some nice gold trim, and yeah, I love it. And with that in mind, today I'm wearing, and it also goes well with that shirt, my only Mont Blanc watch, my 50s style salmon color.
Very nice.
Looks like something that Don Draper of Mad Men would wear.
Yeah.
So every time I wear this shirt, I make sure to wear this Mont Blanc watch. And now I have a nice pen to go along with it. So I'm styling, man.
I just want you to leave me your pen collection whenever the time comes. So if you would do that.
Yeah, I mean, most people say record collection. You're the first one to say pen collection. All right, you know what?
Because I know you got Mont Blancs.
I'm saying it live right now in front of everyone and God. When I die, I am leaving my Mont Blanc pen collection to Mark Hershberger.
Oh.
Yes, and so you better not die first, Mark.
That gives me a reason to live. Right,
it really does, doesn't it?
And speaking of reasons to live, right?
I have some pretty cool Mont Blancs also, like the John Lennon and the Beatles and JFK, which is my favorite.
Nice.
And, as well as some normal looking ones. Anyway, that's enough. We've got an amazing guest tonight. Or indeed. Today, or well, all of the above. We've talked about this for quite a while. Was that John Borak? Oh, maybe it was. Man who was one of the main men of really one of the most beloved bands in the pop music scene, Jellyfish, as well as one of the main men of Imperial Drag, Moog Cookbook, TV Eyes. You're not getting them. Of course, the Lickerish Quartet, and has had a very fruitful solo career as well, including a record that's... Oh, I wanted to show this first. For you Lickerish Quartet fans, if you don't have this one... See, I love ranking albums at the end of each year, as most people know. Mm-hmm. And so when this came out in Japan last year, Fables from Fearless Heights... This is a Lickerish Quartet CD that combines the three EPs that came out on vinyl. So, of course, I counted it as an album, and it did quite well.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, of course, I had to buy it from Japan, so it wasn't cheap, but very well worth it. So if you're a Roger Manning collector and you don't have this, just find it somewhere before it. Japanese CDs tend to go out of print in about 3 minutes, so,
Yes.
so you better find it quickly. Anyway, I interrupted my thread here. He's got a new record, or soon to be. I don't think it's actually out yet. No. Radio Days, which includes the new EP and Glamping as an album. So I get to count this as an album too. Oh, I love it. And it's really good stuff. So check that out. Go to the Omnivore website again. Maybe our guest knows exactly when it's going to be issued, but I don't think it's officially out yet. On my favorite label, my label, Omnivore Record. Mine meaning the IPO CDs on it. I don't own it, but they are so cool. All right. Well, without further ado, would you please give a huge Material Issues welcome to Roger Joseph Manning Jr. Hey.
And there he is. There he is. Wow.
Thank you for having me.
So, Roger, I have to ask you, this is probably not something people lead off an interview with, but is Joseph named for anyone?
Oh, it's just I'm Junior. It's my dad's name. It's my grandfather.
Oh, your grandfather. Okay, yeah. My middle name is Samuel, after L. Jackson. No, it's really
that would have been an amazing coincidence.
It would have been pretty amazing, given that he was about 2 years old at the time that I was born. So, you've got some friends here.
Yes, indeed. No, wonderful, man. Roger Joseph Manning Jr. Of course. I want to use the term, as I always do, and John Bark will make a mention, but iconic bands throughout the years, kicking off with Jellyfish among all of it. Just amazing songwriting, amazing production, everything about it. No wonder your band always ranks high on everybody's list as far as pop music goes. So thank you for the music, first off, my friend. Very, very well done. And rewind a little bit. We always like to start off with how our guests were turned on to music at a young age. Did you come from a musical family? What made Roger Joseph Manning Jr. go, whoa, this is something inside of me?
I actually did not come from a musical family, other than my uncle, my dad's brother, who was a few years younger than him. He was of the right age that he got to be a drummer here in Los Angeles, smack dab in the middle of the Sunset Strip craziness in the mid-'60s. And he was in a band that few people know about, but I'm sure both of you are well aware of. It was one of the surf bands at the time called Davy Allen and the Arrows.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's very cool.
He wasn't their one and only drummer, but he certainly was their drummer for the majority of their career at that time, and has endless stories about all the clubs whose names you guys know, and being on bills with the Music Machine and Love, and
holy cow.
Yeah, just in awe of it all. And he's always enjoyed the fact that I was so interested and gave a damn about any of that, because nobody else in the family does. And so he was my only connection to, mere mortals can actually do this, because some of my earliest memories were my parents, like a lot of people, were obsessed with the Glenn Campbell show and Smothers Brothers when it was out. So I remember being a little guy, and I definitely knew who Glenn Campbell was. And then, you'd see some guests, and that's blurred in there with the moon landing for me. But my earliest memories are the song "Spinning Wheel" and "Age of Aquarius."
1969, yeah.
Yeah, and so my parents said, whenever we were out at a restaurant and those songs came on, I wouldn't stop eating. I just got out of my chair and I started dancing around like a maniac, as if I didn't.
Wow.
Not even intending to do that. That's just what would happen, because I loved those songs so much, especially "Age of Aquarius." So one Christmas, shortly thereafter, my younger brother got a little box of percussion toys like tambourines and shakers and stuff that a relative had given him. And I actually remember this. I literally walked over, I pulled it out of his hands, I ripped it open, and I started playing with everything.
Big brothers, gotta love them.
Yeah, as the egocentric eldest sibling will often do. Anyway, my parents kind of realized, well, he seems to be musically inclined, and all I want to do is play drums. So I have bang on the pots and pans and all that stuff. But they were just aware enough to go, well, if we're going to actually spend our hard-earned cash on music lessons, we want him to learn an instrument that has a harmony and chordal abilities. So that either meant keyboard or guitar. And my grandparents had just donated their spinet piano that they were going to get rid of and upgrade. But they donated to my parents. So suddenly that decision was made for me. There was the piano. And one of the girls down the street, teenage girl in our newly relocated neighborhood we moved into in Northern California in the early 70s, she was teaching piano lessons to all the kids. So my mom signed me up, and I didn't care. I was like, all I want to do is play drums. But I'd go over to their house, and she was one of, I kid you not, I think 12 Mormon siblings. And most of them were female, and she was one of the 17-year-old, and there was a 16-year-old, and the 15-year-old, and it was like, oh, Roger's here, and they'd all come over to the piano and they'd pinch my cheeks, like, oh, he's so cute, he's so cute. So why wouldn't I want to go back to their house?
That's right.
I was gonna say, you must have had a crush on her.
Oh, I had the biggest crush on my piano teacher, without a doubt. And she would give me and all her students little presents, little birthday presents. Stuff. I thought I was the only one who was getting the presents. Anyway, so I didn't quit.
Wouldn't this be a great? This is your life moment if we had the piano teacher in the wing.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, no.
Yeah, as a matter of fact. Anyway, so I'll try to wrap this up. So
it's fine.
I wanted to play drums, and I almost quit piano, and then the movie The Sting came out with the Ragtime soundtrack. I was like, wait a minute. I'm hearing these jazzy tones and harmonies that I wasn't getting at piano lessons. Like, I want to do that. What's that guy doing? So they put some Scott Joplin in front of me, and I didn't quit. And then another 4 years later, I was still bored out of my mind. My uncle sold my parents, a very affordable family rate, his 5-piece Ludwig abalone shell Ringo kit. It was called the Ringo kit. They marketed it as the Ringo kit, apparently.
Right. Yeah.
So suddenly I had a proper drum set. And
so a little foreshadowing there with the Ringo kit.
Yeah, exactly. And I would just play that. I would just turn on KFRC, which was the pop radio station in the Bay Area, and just drum to whatever was on. So Leonard Skinner would come on, and Earth, Wind and Fire, and Billy Joel. I didn't care. I was like self-taught. So I never practiced the piano. And I was going to quit again. And then one afternoon, we were at the big mall, California, right? They had the giant malls. That's where everybody grew up in full mall culture. And you guys might remember a shop in the malls called Musicland.
Oh, Musicland.
Right? They front-loaded the store with all the vinyl, the top 20, all the cassettes and vinyl. Way in the back of the store was actual sheet music for the hits of the day and even music books. And I would go back there and I'd pick up the Kiss sheet music. And I was like, well, this doesn't make any sense. They're like a guitar band. I can read music, but it didn't make any sense to me. And then I looked at the Chicago transcriptions. It's like, oh, I know this song. Oh, there's Saturday in the Park. Oh, there's Old Days. I know these songs. So I convinced my mom to buy me some of that music, and I would go home and kind of stumble through the music. But the best part was it had the guitar tablature with the chord symbols.
Right. Yeah.
So now I was able to teach myself chords, because that's not what my piano teacher was doing. I had very generic piano lessons with classical music, which was great for reading, but I had no idea what I was playing. I didn't know why I liked one song over another song. Well, it had to do with the melody and the harmonic content. I didn't understand that. So I taught myself chords and played along with the Chicago records at home, just needle dropping. And suddenly I was like, I'm hearing the trumpets and the brass and the singer. I was hearing these keyboard things, synthesizers and organs. Like, what's going on there? So that's when I got hooked. and that was around 7th grade. And then I started taking keyboard piano lessons much more seriously. And then in high school, it was just 1,000 miles an hour because these 2 junior highs came together for this high school, and there were a bunch of good drummers. I was like, I'm not as good as those guys. In fact, one of them was a young Andy Sturmer.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, indeed.
Who
yes,
came
indeed.
from the other junior high. I didn't know who he or his family was at all. And so I started to focus on keyboards because I actually saw like a way in there. My high school was quite hip. They had, even though it was out in the sticks, they had a Rhodes electric piano and a really beat up mini Moog.
Wow.
So I was just hooked. Anyway, that's my starter story.
But
Did
see,
you ever get to meet Robert Lamb and tell him how much his keyboards in Chicago influenced you?
I actually did, as of it was right before COVID, so it must have been in 2019 at SIR here in LA.
Wow.
Beck was rehearsing, they were rehearsing, and so there was a mutual friend. There was somebody there I knew who knew Chicago, introduced me to Robert, who was standing outside, and I said, "Look, I'm not going to be that gushing weird fanboy. Just know this: if it wasn't for a handful of moments learning your records at a very young age, I would not be here talking to you, doing this professionally, because I don't have to tell you guys, Chicago was a really great entry point. They weren't so progressive that they alienated you, but they weren't so simple that it was just, some garage band or whatever, which I also adore. They weren't the Stooges, right? So it was this great kind of like, oh, there's some sophistication happening here, and lots of different singers, and all their songs are different musically. They have a varied sound. They're not just a one-dimensional group. All those things were appealing about them to me.
But see, and that's part of the magic of moments, because you're young and you're all of a sudden overtaken by a moment of sheet music and the sounds of Chicago, and it really, the magic happened in your head because you wanted to dig deeper and figure out how everything was going on. And we get that, we've interviewed a lot of artists from the 60s and the 70s, and many of them talk about a certain magical moment with a certain thing that they heard, which changed their life. And they say kind of the same thing. I had the opportunity to talk to this person about that and say, thank you so much, for the music that you gave us. And it's a big deal to those people to hear that from those that they've really affected. But the fact that you stuck with piano and you kept searching and digging and broadening your horizons, it's amazing, because I stuck with piano for about 3 years. That's all I could handle, and I moved on to guitar and everything else. But
now he'd been searching so long. Sorry,
we're going there, are we?
We are.
One thing which I just want to say, because of that song, I actually performed that song with this little trio. I was a member of another guy's trio, but we performed at the junior high talent show, and I convinced the other guys to back me up. And they're like, "Well, who's going to sing it?" It was just bass, piano, and drums. We thought we could cover the whole song. I go, "Well, I'll sing it. That's not a big deal." Of course, it was a big deal. I was about to find that out, and we weren't very good. It was what it was. But for the first time, I heard all the females screaming, because that's what you did if like a musician came out. The girls almost like were trained, like, well, I have to scream for them. And that was a sensation that I was not familiar with at all. I was like, maybe I should put a little more of my eggs in this basket.
And that's a sensation
you don't scream when I came in a room too, but it was for different reasons, unfortunately.
Anyway, it was too searching so long in Chicago.
Yeah. And it's a sensation I don't think you ever get used to. I think you always, every time you walk on stage with anybody screaming and applauding, it's an amazing thing. So, it's a wonderful
now, I wanted to say throughout your career with Jellyfish and your solo albums, there's always been both auditory and visual hints of pop culture. Not just music, not just musical influences. But how important was pop culture to you growing up? Did you watch a lot of the TV shows? Were Sid and Marty Krofft big with you? You know, that kind of stuff. Was that big at the time?
Well, yeah. I mean, probably just like yourselves, I was at the effect of whatever was coming down that very narrow funnel out in the suburbs with, 3 major networks. And right, our avenue of information was so limited. And so I was at the effect of that, just like anybody else. And I had my preferences, but sure. I mean, what I carried forward with me were things that affected me deeply and made me fondly nostalgic for my childhood and growing up. But at the same time, coming from a really small town, I was starving for culture and just options. And we lived about an hour away from San Francisco. And it was only on super rare occasions, or if we had family visiting, that we'd venture an hour into the city and, drive around all the generic tourist places. But I would see like, whoa, these people don't look like the men and women in my neighborhood. And like, oh, look, there's a record store and there's only records in here and they all seem old and used. What's that about? On and on and on. And but then, yeah, when me and my bandmates over the years have launched forward, I think that something that you guys, it's probably very apparent to you, it was always important to me. It was very natural for me to retain as much childhood innocence and lightheartedness and all those positive things, even early heartbreak or whatever, puppy love, all that stuff, in the music I have contributed to with my collaborators. And yeah, I mean, so much of it has to do with the pop culture of the era. And the 60s influenced me to this day in a huge way, but obviously I missed them. I was born mid 60s, and I discovered the 60s more through the the Paisley revival of the 80s than actually any ripple effects in the I remember being in the 70s and early 80s and being excited for what was cutting edge now. I didn't want to know what the old farts were listening to a mere 10 years ago, but I think that's very typical for any generation. It was only, and you guys will appreciate this. So to me, the Rolling Stones was Rolling Stones late 70s, early 80s disco when they start exploring that.
Right.
Beggar's Banquet, Sticky Fingers. I have no other than hearing Brown Sugar, Jumpin' Jack Flash on the radio, right? So to me, when somebody said, "Well, weren't you a fan of the Stones?" I go, it was just more disco to me. It would be years before I would go back, do my Stones homework, and have my mind blown.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Including going all the way back to the beginning, learning and appreciating all that. Obviously, I have moments that, I like more than others, blah, blah, blah. And then going, wow, now I see what they did with their whole disco thing. And I actually like a lot of that now. But, it's almost you had to like re-educate and re-indoctrinate yourself. And that's just because of my age,
Well, you paint with such a broad, colorful musical palette with a lot of your music. It's a very, no matter what the subject matter is, it almost seems like a happy place very much. When you were growing up, were you an effervescent, outgoing, happy type person? And when you think of things like the Moog Cookbook, did you go back and really get into exotica and lounge and keyboardy things like that turned you on to that kind of thing? Because
yeah, I mean, well, to answer the first part of your question, I had an incredibly idyllic childhood. We were lower middle class, but me and my brothers, I have 3 brothers, we were never wanting. My parents were great about trying to give us as many varieties, experiences as they could, and 3 square meals a day on the table, et cetera. I always felt safe. And as you guys know, when all of your basic needs are met and you feel safe, you're just like, oh, I'm free to express.
Right.
You're and you're encouraged to do that. So even with my younger brother, who didn't get very good grades, he was really into snowboarding and skateboarding. My parents didn't discourage that,
Right.
Even though they wished he was a better student. And lo and behold, my brother took that all the way. He became a pro snowboarder.
Wow.
Then he became a filmmaker for action films like snowboarding, surfing, all that stuff. And he's been very happy and does quite well supporting his family. But that's because we came from a family that was kind of like, well, I don't really get what they're doing there. They're going to these punk rock shows and shaving their heads and blah, 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 and, blah, blah, blah. But it seems to be fulfilling. It seems to be a creative outlet for them. And, we'd rather have them doing that than hanging out in the streets late at night. We don't know where they are, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, there's a lot to be said for that, with parents supporting any avenues their kids go. And I've done that with my daughters, and they follow their dreams, and you don't know where it's going to end up. And as long as you are there to support and pump them up and never criticize what they like of their era and things, always stay positive. It leads to great things. And
really, very social kid, just kind of generic, average that way, played lots of sports and stuff. And then a common story happens where I go into high school. I'm not growing as fast as the other kids. The girls aren't giving me attention, asking me to dances like they were 2 years prior. Yeah, because I kind of look like a little Scott Baio, or like a,
that doesn't seem like a bad thing.
Exactly.
The girls would like that, yeah.
So, but a little one.
Well, but that kind of changed in high school.
In junior high, you look.
In like junior, yeah. So that was they were coming to me. At high school, that all changes. They've got the attention of the football players. Everything changes. The mixed blessing in this is that in my frustration and sorrow and depression, I didn't. Half time a teenager they're not self-aware enough to know what's actually taking place. And you got to harness that energy and put it somewhere. And fortunately, I had the healthy outlet of music. So I just threw my sorrow, my heartbreak into music full speed ahead, because it was very clear the more I applied myself, the more reward I got for it. If I was fascinated by Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea or progressive rock musicians, like Tony Banks and Keith Emerson and stuff, I could actually try to go there, and hey, lo and behold, I can actually play the beginning of that song, or I understand what chords they're using. So it just fed itself.
Mm-hmm.
It fed itself, and I was very blessed. I had a friend who came from the other high school. He was my age. We were both freshmen in high school. He was a keyboard player too, and we were basically at the same developmental stage. Only he had learned a lot more chords and improvisation. And I was like, how do you do that? How do you know how to do that? And some Steve Winwood song would come on the radio, and he'd go, well, it's just these chords. I'm like, how are you doing that? My mind was blown. I want to do that. So we had this really great, healthy competition, almost like two sports buddies would. And he'd come to school the next day and go, man, check out this Yes song. I learned this Rick Wakeman part. I'm like, oh my God, you got to show that to me. You got to teach. So I'd run home the next day and we go, oh, look at this Herbie Hancock funky thing that I learned off of the Headhunters record or whatever. Oh, well, you got to show me that. So I couldn't have asked for a better just playmate back then. And we discovered so many things together. We would save our money. All we needed was like $20. We could scrounge up $20. We could pay for a bus to take the BART ticket to Berkeley on Saturday and just walk up and down Telegraph Avenue. There were 6 used vinyl stores. You guys may remember Rasputin's, Leopold.
Yep.
Just like 50-cent vinyl, $1, and we literally hang out there all day until it started going dark and go, oh, this looks weird. I'll buy it. It's 50 cents.
Yeah.
What can I lose? Oh, here's a record that's got Steve Gadd on it. Well, I know that drummer, but I don't know this band that he played with. Let's get it. And this is how we would discover new music. And he'd buy 20 records that I didn't have. I'd buy 20 records he didn't have. And then we'd tape each other's records. Then we had 40 albums.
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel, Talking Heads, Blondie, this progressive rock band, UK, this jazz, Mahavishnu Orchestra, blah, blah, blah. And we're just our drugs were the music.
Yeah.
We just couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
And obviously some of it we were more drawn to, others we weren't. But that's how it all happened. And suddenly this world is opening up to me that seems endless. It's paradise. And I'm just going about, I just studied enough to get a B grades. Didn't really apply myself to school just to get by. It was all about music and whatever that presented next. And as soon as we had wheels, driving into the city to Berkeley, San Francisco, now we're seeing concerts and all that stuff.
No, my story is very similar, except I didn't have the friend to trade records with. My friends and I were always in competition. Like if we found out about a record, it was like, who's going to get it first? Especially if it was something obscure. Also, I wasn't a musician, but just driving into I was brought up in New York, so driving into Manhattan, into the boroughs, finding all these record stores, and taking chances like you did on a lot of things. For whatever reason, you look at the cover. This looks pop. I have to buy it. Or 8 out of 10 times it would work out pretty well. Occasionally you'd make a mistake, but that was the fun of it.
That's why it took it 3 hours. Yeah, to go through A to Z.
My friend took a chance on the Herman and Mink Hollow album because he remembered "Can We Still Be Friends?" He goes, "I remember liking this song," and he got the record, and we're like, "Wait, this guy does everything by himself? Wait, he was in these band, right? The Todd door opened, and it was like, oh my god, and that only happened because my friend I remember that song. Let me pick up this album.
Yeah, I was a little bit older than you, so in around the time late 70s that you're doing this, the Nas albums were like holy grails at that time.
Oh wow,
they were very expensive already. Wow. $30, $40, $50 for the 3 Nas albums, so you're always like hoping to find them a little cheaper somewhere. And I remember when I started college, some guy was bringing his records in to trade in, and he had the first 2 Nas albums, including the second one on red vinyl. And I was so I wanted the clerk or the owner of the store to turn around for a second so I could say, "Excuse me, can we go outside for a minute?
Yeah,
I'll offer you more than he will."
Exactly.
So I didn't get to do that, but that was kind of the fun of the whole thing. But Nas was a big holy grail back then.
Wow. Yeah, even only 10 years later. Yeah.
And you got to look back on those times, Roger, and just as I can tell from how passionate you are, what a wonderful time in life it was to have a friend like that, to collect music that way, to just sit around the turntable and listen intently. I look back on those days so fondly. It's one of my greatest memories is just sitting with a good friend with that new or used vinyl.
Very blessed. Yep.
Were you when did you start in bands? Was that high school when you formed your first
we always had little jam sessions, but we never officially said let's do a band and try to book clubs and things like that. There were all these little collectives. We had like a 4-piece just specifically like jazz group together, piano, drummer, and a sax player. Now, we didn't have any bass players at our school. Well, we had a great bass player, but he was not into jazz. He wasn't interested in playing the upright and anything like that. So my friend and I, this was another happy accident. My friend and I would trade off playing bass synthesizer to cover the bass parts. Now, at first, neither of us wanted to do that. Oh, that's boring. I don't want to just play the bass notes of the song. You get to have all the fun. So we would trade, and then we discovered how much fun it was to create bass lines and what role the bass played in an ensemble, cool things you could do. Because we had a little, like I said, we had the mini Moog for the synth there. And then we fought who gets to play bass on this song because it was so much fun. But simultaneously, we had like a new wave like pop cover band that did like Police and Madness covers and Haircut 100 because they had horns and things like that. So that was really, really fun. Devo songs.
Were you getting gigs with that band?
No, it was just it was literally, we kind of treated it as a class, like after school, to see if we could do it. Like, because it was like, well, if I assign that part and you cover that part, will we sound like the record? And some songs we did, and other songs it was a horrible crash and burn, but you would try to figure out why that was. And we even had, and I had a punk, like a garage punk band too. But it wasn't until college where I was like, I'm gonna save some money, get some used keyboards. I need a keyboard rig, because if somebody's gonna have me in their band, I got to be able to deliver a wide variety of sounds. Otherwise, what's the point? And my first real band was in '86. I answered an ad in the Recycler here in LA, where I was going to school, and they said, you know, U2, Replacements, Husker Du, REM, which of course that's who didn't want to be that in 1986. Right. But we want to color it with keyboards, so we're not just another guitar band. I said, oh, you got your guy, because I loved all that guitar music. And it never occurred to me to actually pick up guitar and learn it, because it's like, well, samplers are out and drum machines are out and synthesizers can do everything. These guys already practiced the guitar. I'm already practiced playing keyboards. I'm not going to learn a new instrument. I'm just going to get better on the keyboard. So I really enjoyed the challenge of colorizing a guitar-driven band. But the funnest band I was in at that time was a band who was kind of giving themselves a restart in the Paisley scene. They'd come up with the Bengals and a lot of the early LA 3 o'clock, a lot of the early LA Paisley bands and Paisley Underground bands, and they were called the Corsairs. And it may ring a bell. They were definitely on the scene, but they were as a trio. Then they kind of ran into some trouble for about a year. So we're going to come back, try it again, but we're going to add keyboards this time. And I was their keyboard player. And the best part about this was they were all about 7 years older than me. And they were willing to take a chance on me. And I could harmonize by ear, but I wasn't very good at it. And they taught me how to be much better at it. We would cover Holly songs and bird songs and other stuff, airplane songs. I forget. Anyway, just very harmonically, lots of harmony-rich songs. And they would teach me the role of the different harmony parts. And that was just mind-blowing. I was like, oh my, this is a gift. This is what I've been wanting to learn more about. And so I couldn't have a better, mentor tutelage with these guys. It was fantastic. And that was for about a year and a half.
And now we're really, I mean, it's an interesting story, because we're seeing how the puzzle pieces are fitting together with you.
Yeah.
When you talk about colorizing music, then you talk about, learning, the intricate harmonies of these bands. Everything, the puzzle starts to fit together. Now you're in college for what's about to come in the future and the things that you're going to start doing writing wise. When did you really start putting the idea of writing stuff together? When did that come for you?
That's a very good question, because it in many ways it was not supposed to happen. I was in high school. I got very, very excited by classic jazz of the 50s, 60s, and then what a lot of people were doing with it in the 70s, where you get that rock jazz hybrid. That was really exciting to me, and I was focusing a lot on that, improvising over other people's music. And so when I went to college, it was on a jazz major, but I knew I would study all kinds of things in music school. I went to music school because I didn't know what I actually wanted to do with music. Mm-hmm. I was fascinated by film scoring. I was fascinated by rock pop stuff and punk music in the clubs, certainly jazz. I was still enjoying even my old progressive rock records. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. Even engineering was fascinating to me. But it was in college that I had this epiphany one day that the funnest songs for me to improvise over were songs that I liked. And that was because of whatever the harmony was doing, the chord changes. So I was only focusing on those songs. It's like, well, if you're going to improvise, you have to learn how to improvise over everything, not just your favorite tunes. Right. So I realized that I'd never written an original idea in my life. And I was still, actually, Andy and I maintained in contact. He remained in Northern California, and we'd make each other listening tapes. What are you checking out now? What's pushing your buttons? And we're actually, that's how he and I rediscovered, I should say, the Monkees together. And just the scope of their work, while we were also sharing jazz stuff. And Andy was getting into a lot of, roots, folk, Dylan-y stuff. And I was getting into a lot of like kind of post-punk, goth art music, like Cocteau Twins, stuff like that. A lot of the crazy stuff that was happening in the UK, I was obsessed. It was like Anglophile obsessed. And of course, one of those bands was XTC.
Yeah.
And the more I learned about XTC and look, because I could sit down and learn their songs in 5 minutes. And I could go, oh, he's going from a C minor 7 to an A flat. Why is that so powerful to me? Right. It shouldn't be that powerful, but it is. What's happening there? And I try to learn the tools and his tricks of the trade, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
Of Andy and Colin. And I would read interviews by them, and I would discover that Andy, before he started XTC, you know, he was really into like the glitter rock scene, but he was also kind of like a jazz snob. And he was fascinated by a lot of the intricate jazz harmony and stuff. So I was like, oh, that's relatable to me. I understand that. Basically, my sophomore year at college, I realized that if I was stuck on a desert island and could only listen to one thing that would bring me joy, it was the XTC catalog. That was at the top of the pyramid. Obviously, there were other things that inspired me and excited me, many, many things. But if it had to be one, that was it.
Not a bad choice.
Wow.
And I became obsessed with everything they did. And so that was my entry point, catalyst point. I learned as much of their music, or more specifically, the tricks of them as composers, including the arranging. Because as you guys know, they go from a wonderful, like almost mod club energy punk band, almost all that, to you can hear where they're learning the Beach Boys, and they're learning more sophisticated. Their Beatles and Pink Floyd catalog is deepening. I mean, those Dukes of Stratosphere records are as important as any regular XTC record. And
Absolutely.
So immersed in all that. And I then dared myself to try to write an idea, a song idea, like a verse chorus that I was excited by. And I didn't realize how scary that was going to be, because I could literally walk over to the piano and, like I said, in about 5 minutes, learn anything that fascinated me. Or if a friend said, hey, do you know what this is? Do you know that? Yeah, sure. Let me know. But I couldn't for the life of me sit down and write an original idea that I thought was cool. Heaven forbid, play it for my girlfriend or friends or other music makers. And what ended up happening was there was a day where I stopped practicing jazz piano. I just stopped and just tried to come up with a chord progression or a melody shape that was fascinating to me. Oh, and well, then where would I go? If that 8-bar phrase is kind of neat and I want to sing it, it feels like something I want to sing and play with and toy with. And keep in mind, I'm not writing lyrics. I'm just singing gibberish like David Byrne. Maybe I can connect something to that and make more of a complete thought out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And this process was both the bane of my existence and the most joy-filled part of my existence at that time. It's almost like I dropped out of college, even though I kept going to classes. And all I wanted to do is, why does Squeeze sound the way they do and give me the joy that Squeeze gives me? Why does Elvis Costello, what's his bag of tricks? What are the Byrds' bag of tricks? What's Queen's bag of tricks? I mean, it was just endless. And just trying to, what Burt Bacharach, right? I just like endlessly fascinating, because everybody had their own little twist. Because they were all kind of inspiring. The British Invasion, everybody's inspiring each other, but the Kinks sound different than the Beatles, sound different than the Pretty Things, sound different, right? Why was that? Yeah. And that's what I became obsessed with. And then I had a roommate at the time who was not a musician, but he was very fascinated. We shared a lot of similar record collection. He was fascinated by me being able to talk about the mechanics of music. So I could tell him his favorite band was The Replacements. So I could tell him, I was like, well, the reason you like Here Comes a Regular versus this other song on the Tim album is because they're kind of doing this with the chords. He goes, that's so weird. I don't really understand what you're talking about because I'm not a musician, but I kind of do. Yeah. So he humored me, and I would play him these ideas that I thought were kind of cool. And he was very respectful. He was very tactful, and he could tell me, he's like, I kind of like this, but you're kind of ripping off the band Talk Talk. You might say something like that, and I go, "Oh my God, you're right." I'm just kind of reinterpreting one of their songs. He goes, "Maybe just work on it some more. Maybe try to put more of your personality into it." That's a great idea. I'm going to go back to the drawing board, right? So he was a great friend to bounce ideas off of like that before I even would play it for other musicians.
I would have been scared to be your roommate because I'm not a musician and I don't know how to read music, and I don't know, I couldn't tell you the difference between a C chord and a D chord, but in my head, I know all that stuff without being able to articulate it. Yeah. And I don't want to know why I love certain things or why I don't love certain things. So for me, the more ignorant I am, the better I'm going to love music. So I'm glad your roommate was cool about you telling him, well, you like this because it's got this chord structure and this chain. It's like, no, Roger, no, I'd be doing that, please.
Well, right. In some ways, you're demystifying it the way music videos did when they came out.
It's fascinating, though, that songwriting didn't come just naturally to you. You really were working at figuring it out. And
I'm not exaggerating. I struggled and challenged myself for a good year and a half before I felt I had 2 or 3 ideas that I would dare play for any of the bands I was working with. In fact, I remember to this day, one of the ideas, it was an incomplete idea, but I had a solid verse structure and a solid chorus structure, and even like a bridge thing, was the song Bye Bye Bye. Before it was complete with lyrics, Andy wrote the lyrics, obviously, and then he and I fleshed it out in terms of the arrangement that you know. That idea, I must have played that for him way back, even when we were in Beatnik Beach, I think, because it was an idea that I, for the first time, was like, I don't care what anybody thinks of this. I believe in this. I stand by it. I'll take it in my grave. This is solid. And for me, that meant that it excited me, and I thought it had a foundation and stood on its own 2 feet, as well as any of the songs that inspired me from my heroes, which is a tall order. Yeah. And any songwriter will talk to you about, like, to arrive at a place like that where you dare present to yourself, let alone the public, I can do this, and I think you should give me your ears and your audience because I feel it's worthy. That in and of itself is a tall claim. A person has to be very grounded in who they are as an individual, you know, and where's arrogance and conceit and come into play, and it's a very delicate dance that most young men and women they're not mature enough to even grapple with. Exactly. But maybe that's why so many people form bands first. You bring these personalities and egos that are in great development together for a whole, and then later people go solo and all that stuff when frankly when they're just more mature, for lack of a better term. They have more self-awareness.
Roger, I've got to get this in because our friend Steve Stanley will be upset if we don't. He wanted me to ask you about the space between.
So the Space Between was the first real band, as I told you, I met in the Recycler. And that was the first band I had where we booked clubs and played the LA club circuit and tried to get a following and plastered our flyers on Melrose Avenue as you did back then. We even rented a house, an old Victorian in Pasadena. Everybody slept in one bedroom, and then the 5th bedroom became our rehearsal room. We hammered mattresses up on the wall. So very romantic. It was, and thankfully we really got along. And here's a quick little story about that. There was the guitar player in the band who I would say of all the band members, I really felt the most kinship and connection with. And he's about 2 years older than me. So very much he was like an older brother I never had. And one weekend we were rehearsing, and he finds out that not only do I not really care for the Who, because the band The Who, because again, I knew It's Hard and Who Are You? Okay, right? Because that was my age.
Right.
That I didn't really care for the Who, but that I even more didn't care for David Bowie, because Let's Dance, that era of Bowie, which I still don't particularly care for. The point is that I didn't know the Spiders from Mars album. I didn't know Man Who Sold the World. I didn't know the Who Sellout. None of these basic pop Overthrow starters, right?
Right.
He was so appalled that he was in a band with a guy who didn't know that didn't know Who Sellout and didn't know Man Who Sold the World, that he was like, oh my god. All right, I'm going to give you these 2 records. You're going to spend the weekend listening to them. You can listen to them once, as many times as you want. If you come back to me on Monday morning and you still tell me you don't care for the Who and David Bowie, then I will forgive you. But it's going to be that much more challenging to actually be in a band with you. That's how serious he was about this. And I was like, wow, dude, that's a big statement, but I respect you. I think you're cool. You've meant the world to me being in this band. You're, like I said, you're like an older brother to me. Sure, I'll go listen to those records. Well, and the rest is history, because both of those were so game-changing and so trajectory for me that I became obsessed with everything early Bowie that I clearly didn't know, and the same with the Who. And I basically started at the beginning and just started going through their catalog, and the world continued to evolve and change. And it's even hard to this day to admit that story, but everybody's got their entry point. And thank God I was in a band with a cool guy who didn't just kick me out of the band that day when he found out I didn't know those records. Oh, get out of here! You're useless,
But you bring up a very good point, though, because your introduction to those artists at that time in your life was, the Let's Dance period of Bowie, and you didn't start from his beginning, and you didn't start from his middle. And a lot of people have to understand that, even with young people today. If you mention, well, you don't like this, it's because the last thing that they ever heard from them might have been something that is not what you realize is their core, their main stuff. And
absolutely,
different eras, different things to different people. But do you, talking about that, do you still find yourself discovering stuff from the 60s and the early 70s that you have not heard before and go, where have I been?
Yes, just not that often. A lot of that for me took place when they were reissuing Everything and His Brother on CD, which I get right. That would have been a lot of the 90s, and into the 2000s. It was just like, I mean, there were 60s bands that were being given a life that they never had originally.
God, that was so wonderful.
Oh, it was absolutely insane. Like, oh, Margot Gurrian has a career now.
Yeah.
And just some of that incredible stuff. I'm not saying I've exhausted all that, but rarely does.
You never do. I mean,
you never do.
Like I said, I'm a little bit older than you, and back in the late 70s, there were so many obscure 60s things I was finding, both on LP and on 45. And even to this day, I'm still hearing stuff that I had no idea existed. It's a never-ending treasure trove. Believe me.
Which, is also a double-edged sword, because it makes me so jaded about contemporary music makers. It's almost like, well, I've got 10 minutes to kill in LA traffic. I'm going to listen to something. What are the odds of me being satisfied and happy if I go back in time versus staying with something current? And unfortunately, we know what the answer is. But I have to, thankfully, I'm married to a wonderful woman who's in music management, and she gets 500 things across her desk every day.
Oh, wonderful.
And she makes a point of like trying to stay current, goes, you know what? I just heard these artists. She goes, it's not my thing. I know you like that sugary sweet melody stuff, but you might like it,
What are some of the most recent things if you can remember, that she's given you?
I'm sorry, I'd have to dig. She does manage a band, though, that at first I was on the fence about, and I've really grown to like, because I think they bring a lot of worlds together, dance and great kind of grooves, but also some very interesting lyric content and interesting melody shapes. They're called U.S. Girls, and I'm giving her a plug here, because she actually has been managing U.S. Girls for the last 3 or 4 years. And actually, I co-wrote a song with their lead singer, Meg, for the most recent record. Co-wrote and produced a song on there. But even their previous record, it's just
very recent.
You know the way the Talking Heads explored a lot of different writing territory, but they had a lot of beat and groove, and you could it was still simple enough you could dance to. Right. But there's a lot of like art school stuff still happening over here. That's a lot of how I see U.S. Girls. They bring a lot of those worlds together.
Oh wow!
And
I just wrote them down, so I'm going to check them out.
Yeah.
Well, let's we're taking a lot of time here with a lot of
we're
Roger,
already at the hour point.
I know,
we haven't even gotten to Jellyfish yet. I knew this was going to happen.
I was just going to say,
a few more questions. I'm good.
Let's get into Jellyfish a little bit. Let's get into.
We have to do Beatnik Beach first.
Well, Beatnik Beach first. Let's get into Beatnik Beach.
No, we don't.
Oh my God, we're gonna have to do part 3, 4, and 5 of this interview.
There it is. There's the copy I found at Deadly Wax Records in Chatsworth. Roger already knows about this. This is an autographed copy to somebody named Mac, who you don't remember who Mac is. No. But it's got the autographs of all 4 of you. So anyway, just wanted to show that to the listeners.
All right. Well, then how did Beatnik Beach come about? How do we get into?
I was in college. And like I said, I was still maintaining long distance connection with Andy. And he was playing in local bands up in San Francisco. And one of the bands was, I forget what they were named at the time, but they were going to evolve into Beatnik Beach. And they had proper management. They had record company interest. They were a local club draw. And I don't remember what the situation was. Their keyboard player moved on. And we were approaching the summer of 1987, I want to say, right before my senior year. So they offered to me to come back up to San Francisco, spend my summer there, and basically moonlight in the band, which was fine. I found work and lived with my parents in the East Bay. Anyway, I started playing in the band. And the best part about it was being able to play with my old high school friend again and be in a professional setting with him. It was fun to have, you'd book a show and there'd actually be people in the audience. These were all things that were novel and refreshing, and a manager that would pay a local sound man to make sure we had proper sound at the show, a proper place to rehearse. I mean, these were all incredibly novel concepts. Right. So when I graduated, then in college, I continued driving up from Los Angeles to play shows and do recordings and so forth. And they started getting label interest. Atlantic Records eventually signed Beatnik Beach. And I was basically just along for the ride because it wasn't my band. Right. The songs were already written. The songs were being sung. I just kind of came in to help flesh out the sound the way the previous keyboard player had done. And I enjoyed doing that. But of course, as Beatnik Beach was continuing to do what it did, Andy and our writing relationship started to form. And we soon realized that if we were going to continue to write the songs Beatnik Beach was not the forum for that. And that's when the group inevitably split it and Jellyfish births out of those ashes.
Yeah, and birth's a good word. Right out of the ashes. Well, I wanted to get into Jellyfish. So how does Jellyfish then form? You and Andy are writing some material. You want to go in a certain direction. Was it right away an idea that we know some people, or we got to find some people that are going to do what we want to do? How does this evolve?
Well, we tried some of the ideas with the Beatnik Beach family, and to their credit, they humored us and did their best. And that's some of those roughs you hear on the box set, Jellyfish box set, if I'm not mistaken. And it was great practice, and it was great to try that material out. But then it became very clear, no, we have to do this on our own with a different set of people with a different aesthetic. And that was not going to be easy to find. So Andy and I continued to just write and demo because we we believed, I wonder if it was Tears for Fears or some band. We read some interview. They were like, well, we got our record deal not from being a band and touring the clubs and getting all the A&R people out. We made the best demo tape we could and then knocked on all the record company doors. And we said, well, that makes sense to us. Yeah. Especially since we don't have a full band. It was kind of have no choice. But we had some nice recording equipment that we'd saved our money up and had. So we could do decent demos. We tried out various local musicians. Some we had success with musically, but for one reason or another, it wasn't going to work out with their personal lives. And on a long shot, I said, well, I know this guy that I met in Los Angeles. He's a fantastic musician, but he and I never found something to work on together, and that was Jason Falker. And I think I'd heard through the grapevine that he was now playing guitar for the 3 o'clock, which to me made all the sense in the world. I was like, well, of course he is. That's where he needs to be.
Until you heard Vermilion, right?
What's that?
Until you heard Vermilion and said, what is 3 o'clock doing? I actually love that album, by the way. But
I don't remember having much of an issue with that. I loved hearing melodies, and there was plenty of that. So it didn't. What I didn't know is that version of the band was about to break up. So when I reached out to Jason on a whim, I might have even asked him, do you know anybody we could talk to? And he said, well, you and I should talk because 3 o'clock just disbanded. So that's when we presented him with the invitation to come up and help us finish demos.
And he was pretty young at that. He was a bit younger than you guys, right?
And he's 2 years younger than me. Right. So I was 22 going on 23. He was 20 going on 21, something like that.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to me, his sister lived in San Francisco, so he literally had a couch to crash on because we couldn't offer him anything. And it was just everybody just this desperation, healthy desperation, like, man, this is our window. We've got to just go for broke. So demo, and try to hone and perfect the sound. And thankfully, it gave me a sense of purpose. It's all I wanted to do every day that I got up. And I was juggling a bunch of different jobs like anybody, renting this closet in the basement of this restaurant for $100 a month. This is a starving artist situation 101.
Right.
So we were all just struggling for that. But the point is with those demos, we saved our record deal with Atlantic until our A&R guy got fired.
Oh, yeah.
But not before we were able to make 4 solid demos. Well, we started King is Half Undressed, That Is Why. Oh, sorry, I don't remember what the other 2 were, but there were 4 songs. And those 4 songs kind of ended up doing the talking for us. So with those 4 songs, we were able to not only find a new record deal that thankfully our A&R man helped us with, and our attorney at the time, but to look for a publishing deal that also then helped with infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. And that was that was the 3 of us. Because Jason's so talented, he played all the bass on those recordings.
Okay.
And it wasn't until after we had a completed album and it was time to tour that we'd been looking for a bass player the whole time, could not find anybody. We were excited. We were excited to have Steve McDonald guest on the record, which was a dream come true because we were such huge Red Cross fans. They were such an inspiration. Also, hugely inspirational for me to what I was bringing to the Jellyfish table. And then it wasn't until it was time to, you got to do this, that we reached out to my brother, who, we knew he was a musician. We knew he wasn't the caliber or the experience, I should say, as the other 3 of us. But he had the right personality and attitude, and he was very excited about the visual side of the group and what we were about to do for our live show and videos and all that stuff. So that's how he kind of fell into the puzzle.
Was it a collective idea to come up with those visuals? And again, that's the pop culture thing, the Dr. Seuss hats and all the colors and everything.
I mean, each of us had our own take on it. Suffice to say, we were not interested in being seen as another singer-songwriter band with jeans and a t-shirt and the acoustic guitar strapped to our back.
Right.
That was the exact opposite of what we were interested in. And I mean, I'd been shopping at thrift stores for years, and I had been acquiring a lot of this, you know, it was, like I said, I was already in the Paisley underground scene, and enjoyed a lot of the mod clothing and the loudness of that. And so it was very much an extension of me and what was going on at the time, certainly in the club scene. And so there was not some band meeting we had like, this is what we're going to do, and you're going to wear this hat, and you're going to wear these high-heeled shoes. It was more a natural outgrowth of what was inspiring us at the time, just living out of thrift stores, like I said, and discovering a lot of fashion we didn't know about. And it was just plentiful, and it was all right in front of our faces. And we knew that we felt that our music was very visual, that it was very celebrational, very emotional, and we wanted the visuals, whatever they were going to be, to reflect that in the videos, in the stage show. The bubble machine that we would have live, that was a very cheap, inexpensive prop that we could bring along that other bands didn't have, but was cartoony and playful, colorful. I hadn't seen bubbles on a TV show since the Lawrence Welk show, and so we all had a good laugh around that. But people really, really loved that. And they're like, "Oh, and you brought the bubble machine." I was like, "Well, we didn't think that would be a hit."
Is Roger freezing on your end too?
Yeah, he just froze. Hopefully he'll be popped right back in here.
Oh,
that was funny. There we go.
Anyway, I'll stop there. The computer made me end my sentence.
What were some of your favorite cartoons in the 70s?
Oh.
Well, I mean, simply because of my age, I was a Hanna-Barbera kid. I mean, it was all about, I inherited the Flintstones and the Jetsons from the 50s and early 60s. But then, of course, you get Scooby-Doo, all the Sid and Marty Krofft stuff. I mean, I loved it all. I mean, and I also loved all of the vintage Looney Tunes, Warner Brothers stuff.
But yeah,
that's obviously decades before my time. All the Chuck Jones stuff. We were big animation fans. Loved animation. That's why the Baby's Coming Back video, when we actually had some say and some money, we're like, we want to do that. And that animator had even worked at Hanna-Barbera and was like, I know what kind of style to give you for that.
What was his name?
Alan, but I don't remember his last name.
Oh, okay.
It's been too long. Very talented guy. But it was all very natural. Obviously we had critics who said things, and it made a lot of sense. Like, you're putting a clown nose on the Mona Lisa painting. And that was a very weighty, understandable statement to make. And yet, it was like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And you're right. There might be some fans.
It must be a time of night. He'll come back. Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear us, Roger, but you're frozen on our end.
It could be. There it is.
Oh, okay.
Did you know you were frozen for about 10 seconds here?
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Did I make the last statement? Did it come across?
I don't.
No, the last statement.
Yeah, I don't think you finished it.
Just to the effect that, we had to accept the fact that, just in terms of statistics, there were probably some people who we were turning away because it was almost like, well, if you guys don't take yourselves seriously, why should we? Because you're not presenting the way, say, Michael Stipe and REM do.
Right.
It's like, well, this is our art. We're very serious about it. That's fine. We're very serious about our art too. And I'm not going to lie to you and be a pouty, frowny guy on stage, because I like smiling and jumping around and, having an element of cross-dressing and playing with all the things of theater, of bands that I'd grown up with, and felt that was desperately missing in modern music. And here was our chance to have a twist on it, have a personal take on it. So it was all very natural and organic, and wasn't for everybody. But we always used to joke, there were no on the fence Jellyfish fans.
Right.
You either totally understood what we were doing musically and visually and were like, sign me up, I can't get enough of it. Or you were way over here like, I don't get it. It's not for me. Not interested. There wasn't any, I like their song, but you know, there's a top hat that looks like Dr. Seuss in the band. So I'm not going to go to the show. I mean, we didn't run into any people like that.
No, I don't think there would have been, because, you know, back at the time, I thought, yeah, I mean, your ensemble, your vibe on stage, it was part and parcel to what the songs were about. So I never thought there was, I didn't think there was any conflict there. I mean, yeah. So it was the kind of thing where if you liked the songs, if you were into that kind of sound, yeah, you were going to like the visual.
Very much, and to the point where we even on our early tours, we had fans who would follow us from city to city, and we're like, wow, this is a bit kind of Grateful Dead, but okay, that's super cool.
Were they dressing like you guys too?
Some of them, yeah. Some of that started to happen, and it was a big. You could tell people were starving. Look, we were the Seattle generation, the grunge generation, and I, to this day, love a lot of that music. I was so into Soundgarden at the time, loved Nirvana, elements of Alice in Chains, good stuff that I'm a rock and roll kid, man. And I thought some of those bands were doing that stuff great. And that's not what our statement was going to be about.
Right.
And I'll never forget when we first played a Seattle show on our own, a club date. We were scared to death to go to Seattle. Like, oh my God, all these rough and tumble rock and rollers, they're going to throw stuff. Well, we couldn't have been further from the truth. We had a great show. We were mobbed outside.
Wow.
Tons of grunge people were there. Like, you're our new favorite band. Oh my God, this is so awesome. And we didn't want to leave. It was like, oh, Seattle gets us. How cool is that? You know?
You know, right when Belly Button came out, right around the same time, Dear 23 did as well.
Yeah,
you know, the Posies out. Did you guys do shows at that time with the Posies?
Not enough. We were huge fans. I was a Posies fan before Jellyfish formed. In fact, I went to see them open for the Wonder Stuff. If you remember that band, I really enjoyed the Wonder Stuff.
Size of a Cow. Yeah.
Great first album. Posies happened to open up for them. Knew nothing about them, and I kind of like, oh, this is kind of a neat, again, kind of psych guitar sound. The two guys are singing. Oh, harmonies. I'm fascinated, right? They came out and did an encore and did Vanishing Girl from the Dukes of Stratosphere.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh, new favorite band. My new favorite band. Little did I know we would cross paths in a few years. There were some brief shows in 1990 that were Red Cross, Posies, Jellyfish.
Damn, I missed those.
Yeah, there were only 4 of them.
Okay, I missed them.
And we came up on stage and did covers with each other. People would jump on stage and play tambourine for a song. Oh my God, Charlotte Caffey, who then married Jet McDonald, they were dating at the time. She would come out. Suddenly I'm doing Fleetwood Mac covers with Charlotte Caffey from the Go-Go's. I'm like, this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
This all makes total sense. Everybody loves everybody. The crowd's going nuts. We need to do, we were trying to tell our management, like, you guys need to book an entire, 6 months of this.
Yeah.
Some version of this. That didn't happen. It was literally 4 shows. Very sad.
Did you ever get the opportunity to talk with Andy Partridge or anybody from XTC about your love of their band?
In 1989, there was some radio promoters festival that happens in different cities.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1989, the city that they had it in was San Francisco. And XTC did something they rarely do. They came on a promotional tour. They would play acoustically at radio stations and make appearances just to do the kissing the babies and doing all the handshakes. And somebody caught wind that XTC was going to be at this radio promo event. And we got our manager to somehow get us into this event, even though we had no business being there. Just Andy and I and his girlfriend at the time. And in the event that I was going to maybe run into Andy Partridge, I better have a cassette ready for him. So I made a cassette of songs that I was very proud of, only 3 or 4, that were overtly XTC. I mean, it was just me trying to do an impersonation. And I thought he might get a kick out of that in all of my infinite ignorance. So I kid you not, I was very shy. It's not like I was going to see him and then just walk up to him. That wasn't going to happen. It was going to be, oh, I bumped into you in the elevator, right? But what ended up happening is we get in there, and I'm talking to a friend that I recognize, and my back, Andy's girlfriend, had seen Andy Partridge and Colin and said, oh, there's the guys Roger wants to say hi to. She walks up to him, interrupts them, said, there's this kid over here that wants to meet you. I turn around. Yeah, I turn around like, Roger, here's XTC. I'm like, oh, I go white. I'm like, no, I'm not really supposed to meet them. Yeah. And this little voice inside of me said, it's now or never. You've been given an opportunity. I walked up to him and I started talking 1,000 miles an hour like I was on speed or something. I'm my shaking hand. I have a cassette, and then I really like you guys, and I read your fan club book, and blah blah blah, and I remember the song on the like that. And he takes his finger and he puts it to my mouth. He goes, "Hush, start over. Take a deep breath. Start over, like that." And I was like, "Oh, I'm being christened by Saint Partridge." Anyway, thank God they were patient, respectful. They weren't jerks. You never meet your heroes kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
Now there's a woman walking around with free champagne and beer the whole time. So I'm just like, whoop, whoop, whoop. Because I drank back then, as any college student did. And throughout the course of the evening, well, inevitably we kept bumping into them. I mean, there's only so many people at this corporate event. And I'm like, oh, I have another question. When you did on the song on Dukes of Stratosphere, when you guys do the, Her Gold Ring, whatever the song is, blah, 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 blah. And I started, and they literally got to the point where like they rolled their eyes like, oh, here he comes again. and by some grace of God, they didn't tell me to go to hell. Could you leave us alone, please? We're happy that you're a fan, but this is ridiculous. Right. They never said that because I was, I wouldn't say I was drunk, but I had alcohol in me. Some of my guard went down, and right. So did I meet Andy Partridge and Colin? Yes, about 10 times in the course of one evening.
Well, weird question, but when Andy put his finger on your mouth and said "hush," was that an inspiration for you doing that?
No, because I think it was more like shush.
Oh, shush. Oh, that's an awesome story. Any of that cassette make it on future albums?
No, but there is one song that I thought about, and I still have a cassette copy of some of those tunes. The cassettes have not deteriorated and broken, and they're in safekeeping. There's one song that I've been thinking, again, you need the leisure time, about kind of resurrecting and presenting to the fans as, here's what I did with this when I was 20 years old. And this is me kind of fleshing it out with some kind of finishing touches, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think the song is as catchy and as hooky as anything I've ever written. But, I thought you'd get a good laugh out of how overtly XTC this is.
Right. Yeah.
Even if I do say so myself, kind of thing.
I think I've always thought, over the years, just following your career. And then when David said we're going to have an opportunity to talk with you on the show here, I said, you know what? I would love if Roger actually did a video series of Let's Write with Roger and get inside your mind of how you flesh things out and how you colorize things, as you said, and how you build and how you layer. I think that would make a fascinating video series. Yeah.
I for people, again, with a willing audience. I love sharing about that stuff because I've loved when I've heard my heroes share about that.
Right.
I literally discovered within the last year, this recently, somebody unearthed these interview segments with Donald Fagen being interviewed by fellow keyboardist extraordinaire Warren Bernhardt, who's a New York guy who's playing I Adore, but it's musician to musician.
Right.
And Donald goes into the mechanics of some of their hits. And it's quite boring unless you know what they're talking about. Right. And it was just a treasure trove to me because it demystified. He basically talks about the song Peg. The song Peg is the blues. It just goes 1-4-5. Right. But he was like, well, for God's sakes, we can't put out yet another boring blues song. So what are all the things we can do, all the tricks of the trade that we can do to keep it the blues, but with just not one twist, but there's about 15 twists that they throw on this song that you don't think of Peg as the blues, right. as a blues jam. But that's what it is at its core. And that was endlessly fascinating to me. And if somebody wants to hear me babble about some Jellyfish tunes or what have you, I'm all too happy to do it. I did offer that and continue to on the fan engagement stuff where, there's for a fee, I'll talk about songwriting and what my kind of tools, the trade are, what I look for. And I even people will send me their songs and we critique them and go over them together and
that's
help
very
with
cool.
The songwriting. Yeah, so that's the closest I've come to that. But it's all about time.
Well, I'm always fascinated with everything you've done, not only from Jellyfish, but the Lickerish Quartet to your solo work, of how you colorize it, how you layer things. Your process. Yeah, my friends, and you're probably familiar with the '70s band Klaatu. They always said if anything worth doing was worth overdoing, and that was kind of Klaatu's nom de plume was let's take this simple concept and let's just overdo it and see what part of the kitchen sink we can keep throwing in. What is your basic thought process when you're putting together a track, whether you start off with an idea on the keyboard? How are you building into a lot of the layered orchestral work that has kind of been your signature?
Well, without overthinking it, for me, it's really about it's really about the joy of creating a little puzzle for yourself. It's almost like one part of you has gone in and set up an obstacle course, and the other part of your personality has dared you to figure it out and complete it. Sometimes that can take 5 minutes. Sometimes it can take 5 days. Right? So I've always enjoyed that self-imposed, or with my collaborators, that self-imposed jigsaw puzzle of creating a song seemingly out of thin air, in the spiritual ether, and then taking it from its raw conception all the way to fruition in the form of some kind of construct that ends up being a recording that you can then share. There's no one right way to get to the finish line. And I like so many different styles of music, so many different composers have inspired me. The trick, or not the trick, so my other philosophy or bumper sticker or t-shirt of the day is serve the song. And as you're in the middle, say I come up with on piano or guitar, or even just in my head in a drum machine, I sing it into my phone, a solid verse, chorus idea, okay? In that moment, and then often I'll just listen to it in my car over and over again. Here's 20 scratch ideas. Well, inevitably, ideally, one or two of those scratch ideas, they stand the test of time. I'm like, man, there's something in there that I really believe in. And the others kind of just fall to the wayside. That just means they didn't stand the test of time, right? The simmering, they're fermenting. So those one or two songs, if they stand the test of time, I'm like, okay, what is their raw aesthetic? What emotions are they evoking? Because whatever that raw energy is, my job now as a producer, arranger, musician, is to not dilute that emotion.
Right.
That raw foundation is evoking for me. Because I want the listener on the receiving end I want them to feel that. Mm-hmm. And everything that I then bring to the table, lyrics, musical arrangements, is it going to be all electronic and synthesized or very organic with orchestra and stuff? everything that I decide, have a lot of harmonies, just a one vocal, no harmony, is going to facilitate and help convey that motion, or it's going to wreck it. It's going to mess with it. That's always the challenge. That hasn't changed from me being a teenager to me being in my 50s.
Right.
Don't fuck up your own song. If anything, try to honor it. Honor that initial spiritual thing that literally came out of thin air. I don't know where this came from. Am I channeling? Is it God, voice, spirit? I don't know what it is. I don't care. My whole goal is to honor it. And then again, if a collaborator brings an idea to you, I've got this great chorus idea. It's such a hook to me. Help me finish it. I'm kind of running into a wall. I try to get into their psyche, honor that the genesis of their idea that they're bringing to it. Yeah. And that was one of the things I prided myself in very early on, because it's very clear to me, although I enjoyed singing and I enjoyed harmonizing a lot, it's very clear to me that when I heard my voice on recording versus hearing other people on recording, I didn't feel I had a lead singer voice per se. And I would hear Eric Dover and Andy Sturmer and these other people, I'd hear them on recordings like, that voice is leaping out. It's leaping out of the speakers. Yeah. There's something there. That's a lead singer voice. So very often I would try to honor that and go take a step backwards and go, okay, how do I support this and become part of the infrastructure that's going to facilitate this? And so I got used to being a chameleon. What is it like to be in Eric Dover's head? What's it like to be in Andy Sturmer's heart center? He seems to be talking about a breakup and this sorrow. Can I kind of get into that headspace? And then that will dictate what I bring to it. Mm-hmm. And obviously we're all going to take a vote on it. Is this working? But that's how I would try to collaborate. And that in and of itself is a whole skill set. We all know this watching the 3-part Beatles documentary that each of those guys played. It's like, whoa, didn't want to be George Harrison in that moment.
I heard, I was listening to a fascinating podcast the other day where Ricky Gervais and Sam Harris were discussing that whole Beatles, DVD they were watching. And they said the most fascinating part about that, and I kind of agree, is that you got the sense that the Beatles were sitting around there doing noodling and figuring things out, but they didn't sit around knowing that they were the Beatles. They weren't. They had no concept of being the Beatles while they were being the Beatles, and I kind of went, whoa, that's something I never thought about. But when they're noodling away at stuff, they were just 4 guys noodling away at stuff.
And very much in the artistic moment where the muse, if you will, ideally is channeling through all of them, and they get some kind of unified thing, right? Sometimes through greater self-awareness later on, that's when the egos start coming more into the picture. It's like, well, clearly I need to be working solo now because, there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. I have to ask you if you remember this, Roger. Speaking of giving cassettes to one of your heroes, you guys did a show, the first incarnation of Jellyfish did a show at Bogart's. I want to say Bogart's in Long Beach in 1991.
I remember the show.
I think you did. Well, I think you did more than one in that tour, but because I remember 2 things. One, Michael Steele was at the show, and when you guys did All I Want Is Everything, Andy sang Bangle instead of Beatle, and she looked really embarrassed. But the other thing was my friend Lisa Michaels was there. I don't know if you ever met her, but she at the time she had released a Christmas album on cassette, and she really wanted Andy to have it. So at the end of one of your songs, she goes up to the stage and hands the cassette, I don't know to whom in the band. And so this is in the middle of your set, right? So she hands the cassette to somebody in the band who hands it back to Andy. And Andy's looking at it. He says, "What is this? Lisa, Lost Winner's Dream? And what's this song here? X times mass equals time squared. Whoever wrote that should be shot." And who did write it was Darian Sahanaja and Nick Walusko of Wonder Woman, who were there at the time, and Nick just wanted to crawl into a hole. It was so sad. Do you remember this happening?
No, not at all.
I mean,
that was not unlike a typical evening. People were handing us their cassettes. Yeah, people handed us their
during
cassettes.
The set. I mean, during your set. Really?
Well, no, you're right. Typically, it was right afterwards, as we were cleaning up, or if we happened to run into people after the show. There was one gentleman whose cassette we got from Ohio, from a band called the Lollipop Factory.
Oh yeah, I love the Lollipop Factory. Yeah.
And there were 2 songs on there that blew our minds, to the point of we auditioned the main songwriter and guitarist when Jason left the band. But anyway, we tried to listen to everything
That's great. Most people just toss them. So that's really nice.
No, it was actually fun. I think that's how we discovered Wondermints.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And what's the beautiful ballad that Darian wrote?
Tracy Hyde.
Thank you. I fell in love with that song.
Yeah.
In fact, I was like, oh shit, somebody's writing something this good. I gotta fucking try to beat it, you know. And
wow,
that kind of, and I've told him that. I mean,
oh wow,
I told Nick and Probin and everybody, like, not only that song, I liked them in general, but that song really leapt out to me, stand out. Yeah, and anyway.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the first incarnation of Jellyfish, this is all good stuff happening, and then obviously there's some unrest between Jason and maybe the rest of you guys. What was that about, and how did it lead to him leaving?
Well, like any family dynamic, it wasn't one thing. It was very complicated. Some of it I understood, some of it I didn't. Ultimately, it just sucked because people weren't getting along, and you know, you're now a married family.
Yeah. And
you're spending all your waking hours with this team of people who have common goals and interests, and you've banded together and ideally put your differences apart for those common goals. But again, it's a tall order for anybody, you know, let alone people in their early 20s who decide they want to get married, a husband and wife. That's the same thing was happening with the band. So I'm not going to even expand upon that because it's nobody's business.
Sure.
And it's a bummer, but not uncommon. I mean, there are bands that are still together now that don't even talk to each other, but the money and the finances have justified it, and they just get together on stage for the hour and a half, and then they all get in their separate limos and separate jets, and that they don't have to interact.
Beach Boys, yeah,
right, and you know, and then they collect their giant checks, and it's all justified. I'm not saying money would have solved any of our personal differences, but I do know this, that had I known there were such things as like therapists and counseling for groups, I would have suggested we all sign ourselves up.
Yeah.
And I've often said, if I ever had my own music school, 2 of the required classes to be able to graduate from Rogers Music School would be you'd have to take a basic economics business class.
Wow.
And basic finances, so that in the rare event you actually accumulate some wealth, you don't piss it all away. You actually know how to do something with it and reinvest, which is a practical life skill no matter what your vocation is. And the second class you'd have to take to be able to graduate would be a basic communications class. And I don't mean communications in the collegiate sense or the scholastic sense, but respectful interaction, dialogue, the way a couple who maybe was thinking about divorcing or breaking up might take before they end it all. Because I can't tell you, and to this day, how many scenarios I'm in where, especially if you're in a group, you have an idea that you want to share. Hey, I think the guitar solo can be improved. Well, there's a respectful way to convey that idea.
Yeah.
That's concise, direct. You actually get your idea heard, and then so that the team of people, including the guitar player, can consider that idea Go, oh, okay. Well, now that you've presented that and you haven't insulted me, I might consider that idea. Let's discuss it. There's ways to do these things.
Sure.
And hopefully, as adults, we learn them as we evolve. But I guarantee you, none of us, speaking for myself, had some of these basic skills back in the day.
Right.
Most people don't. You learn them as you grow up, and we suffered from that as much as any young band did, and that's basically it in a nutshell. The stories aren't very colorful beyond that.
Yeah.
So and so wasn't sleeping with so and so's girlfriend, and was taking so many drugs that they were you could never find them before the show started. It was nothing that romantic.
Darn it! We were looking for good. Sorry, for good television.
The unseemly stuff. Yeah.
Well, you know what? You're also three extremely talented musicians, songwriters with your own. Well, let's not say egos, but in a good sense, an ego with how good you can bring things, and sometimes that can be very difficult as well, as far as just having so much talent within each single member that
and ultimately it worked out well for Jason anyway. He got to do a lot of really good things.
100%. Right.
He didn't disappear.
There's forks in the road. We choose one, and hindsight's 2020, and ultimately it's just a different path. It's not even necessarily a better or worse path. It's just a different path.
Yeah, indeed. But we've got two albums from Jellyfish. Belly Button, Spilt Milk. What in your world? What's the difference between the two albums? What do you think is kind of that separates the two?
Sure, and I'm sorry, I'm out of time, so I'll elaborate on this question.
No, we can go as long as you want to go.
Yeah. Clearly the three of us could go for another 3 or 4 hours.
Probably, yeah. We'll have to do part 2.
So few people give a damn that when some people actually do give a damn. It's really enjoyable to share.
This is all for the way our attitude has always been. No matter how few or many people we have, we just want the ones who give a damn are going to enjoy it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Really, the difference for me between the two records is I always describe Spilt Milk as that's the album that for me, all the ideas that we fantasized about in starting Jellyfish in its very early inception, songwriting, doing demo, all of it comes to fruition with Spilt Milk. I'm 100% happy with and stand by Belly Button, but I feel that there were ideas and things that I would have wanted to take further, or I personally didn't have the skill set to know how to take further. I feel it really then all happens in a more comprehensive, holistic way on Spilt Milk.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How do you get to know Eric and Tim?
Tim was very serendipitous. Our sound man, who was in California with the rest of us, his wife got transferred to Atlanta, Georgia, and he followed her out there for employment. And he started moonlighting in the local clubs as a sound man. And he saw one of Tim's projects and befriended him. And so he was in touch with Tim Smith. So when suddenly Jellyfish found itself without a bass player, our sound man said, I think I have somebody you should definitely speak to. Yeah. And Tim was excited. Tim was aware of Jellyfish, and he got on a plane, come out and met us, and pretty much fell into place right away. We met him and decided to work with him right before it was time to go in the studio. So he didn't do any of the demos with us, but was there to start tracking, playing some bass and singing with us. And Eric was somebody that Tim Smith had met very briefly, like literally in passing, when Tim was touring the Deep South with his band, and Eric's band had opened. And he remembered, I heard this guy. In fact, I don't even think he cared for the music that much. He was like, this guy can sing. And I know he plays guitar. He goes, I know he can sing. I don't know anything about his guitar playing. So Eric also got on a plane, came out to LA. We were mixing Spilt Milk. The album was finished. was putting the finishing touches on the mixing, knew we had to start getting a live situation together, and auditioned Eric. And really, I mean, to these guys' credit, and this goes for my brother too, back in the day, we had so little time. It was kind of like, we heard Eric sing and some recording. It was like, oh my God, you know, we're going to be able to integrate him into the harmonies. And frankly, it's going to be a joy because that classic male tenor, he has a very powerful upper register. You know, I can sing high, but it's got to be falsetto. It's got to be Brian Wilson falsetto. I can't belt out Freddie Mercury, Paul Rogers notes. Well,
Right.
Eric Dover could effortlessly and quite well. So we were very excited to have that vocal power in the band. It turned out that with some patience and allowing Eric to be left to his own devices, he's a very night and day, 180-degree player from Jason, but left to his own devices was quite the guitar player, very interesting, very unique. And we just had to be patient and allow him to figure out how is he going to integrate into Jellyfish that way as a guitar player. And I remember we were, you know, gosh, probably a month into touring, and it clicked. And we're like, there it is. That's exactly, you know, we coalesced into a band.
Was he spiritually simpatico with you too?
Was Eric Dover?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, enough of the same influences, and you know, like much to everybody's amazement, Eric Dover was a huge Prince fan. You know, so a lot of his ideas were coming from this. It was just very, very fascinating, but welcome, because in any group, it's very easy to get locked into your little box.
Mm-hmm.
This is the stuff that we know that works, you know. So having that fresh ideas, fresh blood, so to speak, was very welcome. And so again, and just very random how we met Eric and what he was doing there, and you know, this kid from Birmingham, Alabama, and it was kind of like he kind of just got dropped in there. There's a Jellyfish video that will often pop up in my feed if I'm listening to anything, you know, power poppy at all, and it's this performance of joining a fan club. I don't remember what the tour was, but I only point it out because it brings a smile to my face when I see it, because we were in top form. Like to get to practice the mechanics and then execute them live for especially the Spilt Milk album was just an undertaking that was even ridiculously hard for us. It's like, my God, what have we done? It's going to be really hard to recreate any part of this record live, just the four of us. And even back then, if had the technology existed to play backing tracks or what have you, you would have been shot. That was not okay. You did not do that. You did not deceive the ticket buying public with anything like that. They value and appreciate your vocal harmonies, so you better do those live.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember this one guy, because I played a sampler for part of my keyboards to play some of the trumpets and some of the string sounds and stuff, and even some of the Wurlitzer sounds. I didn't have a real Wurlitzer out there. And this fan came up to me after the show one night and said, "Man, just loving all the sounds coming out of the keyboards. You know, you got the Wurlitzer and the trumpets and stuff, and even some of those backing vocals are coming off the sampler." I go, "No, they're not, motherfucker." I'm a little guy, and he's bigger than me. I wanted to punch him in the face. Like, you know, you dumbass, you couldn't even tell. We're up there sweating bullets. You know. Anyway, I got really offended until I calmed down. I had my stage energy. You know, I just gotten off the stage. Anyway,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, so this performance of joining a fan club, I'm very, very proud of it, because we absolutely nailed it and did everything we set out to do, including we rearranged the whole ending of the song to a degree. And I remember it was an idea that Andy had to drop out some of the instruments and just sing a cappella and add a break and add some more drama. And all of us, I'll never forget, we all said, "Oh, damn, that's how we should have recorded the song."
Oh, wow.
The recorded version, the album version, should have had this new approach to the ending, this new arrangement approach.
Wow.
And anyway, for what it's worth, that's some fan trivia. But that performance makes me smile because it's like you can't pull that off with anything but those 4 people.
Yeah.
Because all those roles are very important.
Just so you know, Roger, in beginning of 1977, I had just started college. I saw Queen at the Syracuse War Memorial, and when they got to Bohemian Rhapsody, Freddie Mercury was somewhat upfront about this. He said, well, this part I don't believe, but he said, we've never done it this way before, but we're going to use tapes on this version, on our version of Bohemian Rhapsody. So we really want to do it justice because we can't recreate it. And they actually did admit to using backing stuff.
And respect to them for doing that. ELO wasn't as forthright. But that's a cool story to hear.
Yeah.
Well, Roger,
that was their biggest song.
I know you said, Roger, your time is running out. I don't want to keep you here for that much longer, but I do want to get in a little blurb about Radio Days before you go. That's the we wanted to know, is it released yet officially, or when's the official release date?
It's mid-October, if I'm not mistaken. We're gonna feature yet another single called "On Our Way to the Moon," and then the physical comes out officially mid-October.
And that's on Omnivore, right?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Omnivore. Very good. Well,
do you have a copy of the IPO CD yet? Because if you don't, I need to send you one.
Of the latest one?
Yeah, the one. Yeah,
I do not.
Well,
I welcome it.
We'll get in touch. I'll get your address. I'll send you a copy.
Thank you. Those are always a treat to listen to.
No, and it's great to have you on that.
Which track did you select?
Oh, you don't even know "Rockin' It Our Way."
That's what I assumed. Yeah.
Awesome single. I really love it. Yeah, love it. But as you said, we could go on talking for 3 to 4 more hours. We may have to do part 2 later on, so
we would love to do a part 2 with you, and maybe we'll even do it. Maybe if you're up for it, we'll even do kind of a 70s trivia game.
Oh,
whatever you want. I don't know how well I'll do at that, but I'm.
Oh, you would. Well, we'll make sure you do well.
I'm happy to try. I might score better on the TV portion than on the actual music.
Well, that's really what we were thinking.
Okay.
More of a pop culture thing.
You'll appreciate this. My wife and I were driving home from an event the other night, and I don't know why I started doing this, but I started humming the "I Dream of Jeannie" theme, which is one of my favorite Hugo Montenegro pieces he's ever written. And my girl goes, "Oh, I know this one." And she's singing along with me. She goes, "What is that?" And I go, "Well, it was from one of our favorite TV shows." She goes, "Oh my God, I don't know which one." And then I started singing the Bewitched theme. And she goes, "Oh, I know this one too. I love this song." She starts singing, she goes, "What's that from?" So she was getting super frustrated not knowing what the TV shows were, because in her mind it was just all getting mixed up.
Right.
These are all the shows that I watched when I had to stay home from school, right? That were all in.
Got to, in my yeah. I always thought got to, not had to.
So I had fun. I had fun telling her, but she's like, and she even goes, "God, they were so good at writing melodies back then. I'll never forget any of these melodies." And I go, "Yep,
yep,
for sure,
yep, exactly." Well, Roger, again, thank you so much for your time tonight. I think part 2 will definitely have to come up because we had a lot of ground we didn't get to cover tonight, and we'd like to do that again. And of course, best wishes with Radio Days coming out mid-October on Omnivore. I did run the banner across the bottom. Anybody wants to know or any kind of merchandise available from Roger, it's Roger Joseph Manning Jr. Official.com. Rolling right across the bottom. So make sure you visit it.
You're doing to spread the word.
Check it out.
Thank you so much for being on Material Issues. Always great to see you, and thank you for all the music you've given us. We didn't get the tip of the iceberg with your solo stuff, but we will in part 2.
Yes,
and
wonderful.
Thank you for the IPO shows you played, and it meant so much to me.
I know. I wish I could do more. Well, a lot of the some of those recordings are featured on the new compilation that's coming.
Yeah, I wondered if that was the case, because they actually don't mention where they're from, and I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for letting me know that. Oh, now I feel so much better.
Thank you, guys.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
we appreciate it. Roger, have a great night. Stay happy, healthy, grateful, and we'll talk to you again in the near future.
Same, gentlemen. Thank you.
Take care, Roger. Thanks.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, wow. That was so much fun. And yeah.
Well, there you have it. Yes.
Like it's been with a few of our other guests, but not a whole lot, but a few. Because Roger shares so much of our musical taste.
Yeah.
We could have talked about bands with him forever.
Yeah.
Not to mention his own. We didn't even get to Imperial Drag, for God's sakes. Thank you, John Borak. It really was.
I thought it was ironic.
Ironic. No, I mean, in our pop world, such as it is, and I'm very, very proud of it, as I know Mark is.
Yeah.
Jellyfish and Roger Manning, extremely iconic. I know that word is overused, just like the word genius and great and so many other superlative words. But
when you think about it,
Jellyfish and Roger Joseph Manning Jr. definitely iconic.
When you think about it, though, what's a better word than iconic? Do we have one that? I was thinking about this the other day. If I wanted to say that,
noteworthy. I mean, that just doesn't really sound so complimentary, even though it is.
Iconic, it rolls off your tongue.
It does.
It means a lot. I was thinking about this the other day walking Ches. If I had to not use the word iconic, but I wanted it to mean an icon of my time, what would it be? And I can't. I haven't come up with a better word than iconic.
And Jason, absolutely. Extremely iconic.
Hot.
No, we're not going to.
How about HAUTE? Haute. Haute cuisine. Well, it's all good.
Some of the more pulchritudinous female bands we can use hot.
But what a great interview. What a great show.
He was so enthused and he elaborated, expounded upon things. Yeah.
And we'll have to do part two. We'll have to pick up from Jellyfish forward, because I knew once we hit the over the hour mark, and we hadn't even gotten to Jellyfish yet.
Well, once we saw how enthused Roger was and how much he talked about, thank you. Once he started expanding upon things, it was like, oh yeah, this is going to go on. If we let it, this is going to go on for 4 hours. There's no and.
Well, he mentioned about it was about 15 minutes ago. He said, I have to wrap it up and I'll answer this question quick. And then it went on for another 15 minutes. I got to give him an out here because I knew he had to get going. But I'd love to do a part two. That was really great.
Yeah, awesome. I'm sure he'll be up for it. So yeah, whenever that works out, we'll do it.
Man, awesome.
But we also have some other very cool guests coming up, and some of them are actually music related.
Well, I think next week it's just you and I, right?
September 27th, to quote Chicago, just you and me. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do some version of Stump the Bash or Bash the Bash or
whatever works.
Bash the Icon or something like that. We'll have some fun, and we always have enough to talk about. But then we got October 4th. We'll roll around as early October, and we've talked about this before. It's a non-musical guest, but it's a very classic book for those people who not only are into baseball cards, but into humorous writing. It's the Great American Baseball Card Flipping, Trading, and Bubblegum book. It's a book that was near and dear to me growing up. Fred Harris, one of the two authors, Brendan Boyd and Fred Harris. Fred Harris will be our guest on October 4th, talking about how he put together this book and everything else he's done in the writing world.
It really meant a lot to a lot of us. I remember when I first saw it in the store. I mean, I think I begged my mom to give me the money to buy it. I was like, how old was I then? Maybe about 14, and I didn't have any cash on me, and it's like, Mom, please, I have to have this.
And it's I can't believe my copy. I can feel it. Like if I bend it just a little too far, the whole thing's going to fall apart.
That's what she said.
That's what she said. Yeah.
Sorry.
But,
sorry, viewers.
But Fred Harris on October 4th.
Fred Harris on October 4th, and then the following week, yes, we will get back to music. Many of us, and we haven't spoken about this guest yet,
right?
But many of us grew up reading Trouser Press magazine. It was along with Bomb, Trouser Press was the primary source for finding out about bands that were not part of the mainstream.
Yeah.
That you couldn't see on television or maybe even hear on the radio unless you were listening to some kind of college radio station who may or may not have played them. And we learned about so many different bands from this magazine.
Yeah.
And over the years, this gentleman has written so many books, including the Trouser Press Record Guide, several editions. And it's going to be great to have Mr. Ira Robbins as our guest on October 11th on Material Issues. And we'll certainly have a lot to talk about.
I know.
Oh, no. Well, El, it's archived, as you know, but unfortunately, you didn't get to ask the man any questions. But it was a really good interview. You'll enjoy it.
Thank you. You're absolutely right.
They're iconic. Yes, indeed.
I think Ira Robbins could be another one where we could go on for hours about bands and things. That would be crazy.
If he's into it, we'll certainly do it. But yeah, so Ira Robbins, October 11th on Material Issues. On the 18th, do we have a guest yet? I don't think we do. Right?
Nobody's scheduled yet.
But on the 25th, or if you happen to live down under, on the 26th, because of the time change,
how does that work?
Be having, and I bet John Borick would agree that this guy is iconic. One of maybe the most iconic power pop artists from Australia.
Yeah.
Yes, we know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay meaning Jason Faulkner, by the way. Yeah. Roger toured with Beck, and Jason was part of the band as well. But anyway, on October 25th, we need to do our show. You want to be a guest?
You guys have a show? You're holding out on me, David? All right.
Ellen and I have done a lot of things we don't want to talk about. No, that's not true.
Not true.
Anyhow,
from down under.
I just embarrassed the hell out of her.
And yourself.
On October 25th/26th, we will have the main man of such bands as the Stems, the Some Loves, DM3, and a few others. Yes, Mr. Don Mariani will be our guest on Material Issues. John Borick, is he iconic? Come on. You're still there. You better admit that he is.
And I'll actually be in Florida for that show, possibly going live from Disney World again, like I did in our first year. So that'll be kind of fun. I'll be hanging out.
Yeah, that'll be great. I have to thank my friend Phil Galloway of Off the Record in Encinitas.
Hey, Kerry.
He's the one who first played me the Stems. Yeah, he and I, it was very cool. I went down to that place. I'd heard about it. And when I was in there, only because Phil will never be a guest on the show probably, but he was playing My Car by Direct Hits. I didn't know who they were, but I knew I loved the song. And I ran up to the counter and said, "Who is this?" And he told me, and I said, "Is it for sale?" And thankfully it was. And I picked it up, and we started talking about what we like. I know who that is. No picking on Jim. Oh, that's right. That's true. We talk about that. Gen X. She's a Gen Xer. But anyway, Phil and I started talking, and we were going over our different musical tastes. And then every time I would come into the shop, he'd say, "I have something really bashian for you this week." Because he was cool. They got in a lot of really cool imports, which a lot of stores back then didn't. And he said, "There's this band out of Australia called the Stems. You really need to hear them." And I said, "Put it on." And he did. And immediately it was like, I heard the song At First Sight, and it's like, okay, I'm buying this. And my love affair with Don Mariani's music started right there. And then Phil also turned me on to the Some Loves a few years later. And then DM3 I found out through another source. I don't remember. But thank you, Phil, for turning me on, leading me down the Don Mariani path.
Yeah.
So it's going to be cool having him on Material Issues.
Well, good. I'm third on the list.
I must be like 15th.
Yeah, well, you're part of the etc.
Yeah, I am. I'm the out crowd, etc. I guess. That's okay. Wouldn't be the first time.
we got some great guests coming up. We have some holes that are in there that we're either going to stump the bash and play some fun things, or we have some guests. We've got irons in the fire. You never know who might pop up. So again, if you haven't subscribed here on Facebook or over on YouTube at materialissues.com, please do that, and we'll let you know who's coming up, and you won't miss maybe a live show that you might want to ask somebody some questions, which is kind of cool. So or make some statements. So we love everybody hanging out with us here.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We're over the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, we don't have fans of the show. We just have friends of the show, which is a big difference. So there you go.
I think there are people who are friends and fans. Oh, okay. I just got the reference. That's an inside thing between John Borak.
All right. Yeah, I got you.
We definitely don't want to go there either.
But yeah, you're right. We've hit the 2-hour mark. This has been a big one. So probably about time we wrap it up and take the dog out.
And everyone, again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Next week, it looks like it'll just be Mark and me, but we'll have a good time as we always do. And then stay tuned in the following weeks for all the great guests we're going to have.
Yep.
Everyone have a great rest of your day / night, week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Good night, everybody. Good night, David. Love to Arena. Away we go.
Love to Chaz.